Welcome to the Ironcenturion podcast, a Christ-centered adventure into leadership, manliness, and brotherhood. Happy New Year, Michael. It's good to see you again.
Hey, Tim. Happy New Year.
Well, we are on the fresh side of 2022, and we've got some exciting things coming up this year for Ironcenturion. But real quick, though, I want to talk about some goals. So last year we had talked about our goal-setting process, and that's an episode that we can link in the show notes below if you didn't get a chance to hear it. But goals and New Year's resolutions are somewhat linked. Lance Cashin makes a strong point that you should not call them the same things. But for us, some of those goals are wrapping up. Michael, I know your year end kind of ends around the January timeline. Mine is closer to February, March, but we can still talk about how mine ended up as well if you're interested.
Yeah. How do you feel you're on track to hit your goals for the year?
I feel like I've made a lot more progress than in prior years. I've met most of them. There's a few outstanding ones that I'm still going to be working hard towards to get done by March. But I'd say overall, I had a much more successful year. I think just I was trying to be more intentional about those things and was able to accomplish most of what I set out to do. So how about you?
Well, I didn't hit all of my goals, but I feel really good about this last year. I think it's the most successful one I've had so far, meaning the biggest and most important goals, I hit those. I didn't do a stupid thing around books this year and missed my goal by just a hair because I wasn't planning timing well, which feels a lot better. So I hit my book reading goal, exceeded a little bit, and that was nice. And some of the main goals I really hit, which gave me a lot of energy into setting goals for this coming year. So I've set some new goals. I'm excited about those and have already gotten started. And I'm
real quick though, how many books did you end up reading?
I did 54.
54.
So
just over one a week.
Just over one a week. My goal was to do 52 because I wanted to see if I could do one a week. And the answer is I did. I can.
So are you going to try to keep that up again for this year?
I was thinking about lowering it, and I actually ended up raising the goal. So we'll see if I can do more than one a week. And I don't know if it's possible, but we'll find out.
All right. If you guys are interested, you can follow us on Goodreads to see what we're up to reading. I read far less than Michael does. I'm more at the one a month type of pace. But if you're interested in seeing what we're reading, feel free to look us up on Goodreads. So what are you working on for 2022?
So I've got the reading goal. That'll be one of the big ones. I've got a couple of project related goals. So I've kind of created almost a quasi new category for me from the ones we talked about in episode 4. Just kind of this like project skill development category. And I'm excited about some of the things in there. I put some goals about some survival skills that I want to refresh or enhance or learn, update, and test out. And I've also put in some house project goals to kind of keep me focused on not starting too many projects, but being focused on quality finishing projects. I can start a lot of them and forget to finish them. And so I've listed the projects that I want to finish this year. And so hopefully that'll be a helpful thing.
Awesome.
It was last year.
Yep. Yeah, I spent some time as well over the Christmas break, just kind of thinking about what I want 2020 to look like, or 2022 to look like from a goal standpoint. Some of my project ones I'm looking forward to. I'm going to try to finish a flight simulator I've been working on for quite some time. It's that's a conversation for another day, but learning some coding and all sorts of stuff that I haven't had to do yet on it, but it's going to be a pretty fun project, I think. But then I'm also looking at some social goals and family goals. I want to be less available to people outside of the house and more available to people inside the house. I realize I've just kind of got a love-hate relationship with technology, and it's very easy to be accessible all the time, and a lot of times the people who suffer most from that are my kids when I come home from work and have other things that I'm attending to. So I'm going to dedicate and carve out some time from pretty much the moment I walk through the door until maybe 30 or 40 minutes after they go to bed, so that gives time to both my wife and my kids uninterrupted by technology. So
that's cool. I was going to ask how you were going to like measure that or quantify that so you can know if you're, on track or not. But
sure,
that makes sense. Yeah. So like a window of time.
Yep. Where the cell phone just goes away. So we'll see how that works.
A book I read last year called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry talks about technology specifically. And one of the suggestions in that book and a few others is that in the evenings at a certain time, like the whole family has a place where all cell phones go. They have, this author had some older kids, old enough to have phones, but the whole family has a place like in the family room where cell phones charge overnight. So at like 7 or 8, I can't remember the time for them, all phones household wide go in the charging station and they stay there until like morning. Like they have actual alarm clocks and they use actual alarm clocks and phones go and stay there. And I was like, wow. I don't know if I don't know if I could do that. My phone is currently maybe too much of my life, but it's very much not in another room ever. And so interesting. That's a good goal.
Yeah. But speaking of parenting and parenting goals, we've got a really interesting guest coming up on the podcast today. Cohlby Youtsey is a good friend of ours and has been one of those good friends for, I don't know, probably about 7 years now since we started the ministry. We met him pretty early on. And he and Bo Glenn run a ministry here in Fort Worth. It's called Pure Adventure. And they connect fathers and sons. So we're going to be talking to Cohlby here. He's announced recently to us that his updated title is Lord Cohlby.
Lord Cohlby.
We'll let him talk a little bit more about that coming up on the episode. But yeah, looking forward to what Cohlby has to share with us about raising sons.
Hey, Cohlby, thanks for being here with us tonight.
Hi, thanks for having me, Michael. Tim, pleasure being here.
So during your introduction, we mentioned that you actually are a Lord.
I
How
am.
does that happen?
Technically, legally, I guess I am. So this past Christmas, my wife got me a present, which happened to be I believe it's a 1 foot by 10 foot plot of land in Scotland. And with it comes a Lord and Lady title. So
I'm assuming there is a 1 foot by 10 foot castle on said plot of land, right?
yeah, we'll go with castle.
Yeah.
Probably sheep poop, but castle works too. But yeah, so Christina and I and our heirs all have this title. So it was a really unique Christmas gift, to say the least.
That is
So
fantastic.
can you did you get like a certificate of authenticity, or like do you have a bottle of dirt from it? Like can you go visit?
Yeah,
How do you
so
know?
we got this certificate that's signed, probably printed by the Queen of England, and the titles that she bestows through her realms. And then it lists like the coordinates of the land and the plot number and the little town it's in. And, I'm positive it's a tourist gimmick, but it was really cool. We got a good laugh out of it. And now, when I go and sign up for airline miles or something, I can check that little box that I have a title.
Outstanding.
So do you think, because I've seen these advertised before, in different places to get the title, do you think they sell the same piece of land multiple times, or do you think you're the only one that's got a certificate for that section?
Michael is so skeptical. I can't believe you even ask a question like that.
I would like to believe that not only do I have a piece of paper that shows my land, but that piece of land has a piece of paper that shows its owner. So that's what I'm putting in my mind. So one day, if we get to go over there, I can say, look, kids, we own this right here.
A little bit of Braveheart history.
Yeah.
Right there.
But it is very specific that we have absolutely zero rights with this plot of land.
So you can't build a castle on it.
Or sell it, or, yeah, it's really just, you own like the top probably, 1/8 inch of dirt that's on there and nothing else.
Do you have to do maintenance on it?
I sure hope not. I don't know. It's probably some peat bog or something. So, it's just let nature take it over.
Can you set up like a streaming camera on it to just see what's happening on your
game
property?
cam?
Yeah.
I'll see if we, yeah. I'll call our caretaker and have him go out there and set up a game cam and stream it to us.
All right. So this is a title then you said that goes down to heirs. So it's Lord and Lady. Is there a title that your kids get to use now, or do you have to bequeath it to them?
I'm not sure if they become lords as well. We've got 3 boys. So if that happens now or it's just once we die, or I don't know how that works. I've never been the recipient of a title through one way or another, so I don't know how to pass it on.
All very new. Fortunately, I've actually had training on how to speak to royals in the British monarchy. So this is going to be a very comfortable conversation for us because I've been trained on how to speak to you.
Okay. Good. Well, we're not super formal. Just,
okay.
Your lordship is fine.
Okay.
Well, speaking of things that you can pass on and know probably how to pass on to kids, to sons, Cohlby, with your involvement and role with Pure Adventure, we wanted to have a conversation with you about what are some of the ways that a father can be involved in raising his sons and engaging them intentionally in their life path. And I know that that's something you know about and speak about, and it's what the organization you're a part of helps do. And so we thought it'd be good to have a conversation together for our listeners that are currently in the process of raising their own sons, interesting ways they can help bring them up into manhood and connect with them. And so wanted to ask you some of your thoughts on what a father's role is in raising sons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's first touch on the Pure Adventure side, though. Let's talk about, just make sure that the audience understands kind of what that role looks like, what you guys do as a ministry, and how that can.
So, in a nutshell, Pure Adventure is a one-day event, and we say it's our passion, our mission is connecting fathers and sons with Christ in the middle of their relationship, or Christ at the heart of their relationship. So, that's the whole day we do. It's a fun day. It's an interactive day. There's lots of activities. There's lots of one-on-one conversations. But the heart of everything we do is getting these dads and sons to connect with each other and then put Christ into what they're building.
Yeah. So you're bringing the boys out there and you're teaching them things, like knitting and baking and how they
Absolutely. Lots of arts and crafts time, how to choose the right color scheme.
Yep.
But no, we do, we always start with paintball. We do, if it goes bang, we try to have it out there. So skeet shooting, rifles, black powder, archery.
You have a cannon that launches fruits and vegetables.
We do. We've got a air-powered cannon. We call it the lime cannon. Sometimes it's the orange cannon. It depends on which produce we can find in bulk. Yeah. You just, and that'll, we'll send limes and oranges out into neighboring pastures or splatter them on, sometimes put them through a 1/2-inch sheet of plywood. So big manly things that the dads and sons can laugh about and have fun. And ultimately, even though it looks like we're just big kids playing around, it's an exercise in connection.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
the dad is teaching, he's imparting things to his young man, and they're making memories together.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I can remember times like that with my dad where we, especially doing scouts growing up as a kid, spending that time with my dad doing fun things. And those are memories that stick. So that's really cool that you guys are being intentional about helping dads create those for their sons. That's really neat.
Yep. Yeah. It's, Michael, you said it a second ago, and Tim, you just said it, intentional. And that's one of our key words is, we tell the dads, you have to be intentional. And we say the same thing to the young men. Especially as the young men get older, it becomes a two-way street where they need to be engaged with each other. They need to be intentional with each other. As dads, that's our role, is to lead our family. So we encourage and we try to set the dads up to take the lead. But it's obviously a two-way street where the young men come along and have to put a little bit of work into that relationship as well. Especially, as I said, as they get into the teenage years and out of the teenage years.
Yeah, because you guys are mainly working with boys, 12 and up? Is that kind of your target audience?
10 and up.
Okay.
Most of our events, I'd say, are 10 to 18. But we have, the sky's the limit. There's never a wrong time or a time that has been passed to hang out with your dad. I was 30 when my dad and I went through this event, and we've had several, like the 50-year-old son and the 75-year-old dad that
really
come out and they spend the day with us. So it's not the norm, but it happens, and they have a fantastic time.
That's awesome.
I mean, putting a lime through a piece of plywood sounds awesome at any age.
Michael's
right?
still stuck on that.
Can we go back to the stuff that,
Yep, I got stuck there. That's for sure.
yeah, we don't get to blow up as much stuff as you guys do, but we do burn through a whole lot of gunpowder. So
It's respectable.
So, what are some of the things that are values that you intentionally weave into the day or at your events, or what are things that you think are important? You mentioned kind of intentionality idea. What are some of the key building blocks of a good father-son relationship?
Well, so as we kind of go through the day, it starts, well, first off, like I said, we start off with paintball, and we tell the dads, like, this is the hardest thing you're going to do all day is, you got to be just running and gunning. But what that does is that breaks off the ice, right? Like anything they showed up with, they argued in the whole car ride up there. They went to bed angry, whatever it is their relationship looks like, that breaks that off. So then that opens up the conversations, and then the conversations change throughout the day. But to your point, Michael, kind of the highlights of that is, the first one is just on the father-son relationship. And, what does that look like? What can that look like? But ultimately, what is our Heavenly Father modeling for us? Everything we do, we tie back to Scripture. The kind of the main Scripture for the whole day, but also for that morning time that we spend with them is Ecclesiastes 4:12. And it's the cord of three strands. So it's the dad and son coming together. It's the one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. The cord of three strands is not easily broken. And we talk about what that looks like. And so, when you're separated as father and son, we say that's your roadkill on the road to life. You're trying to do things yourself, and you can't protect yourself. You can't, as you guys in your military backgrounds, no one's got your back. But when you come together, a cord of or two strands is not easily defeated. Okay, now you've got each other's back. And we go through that and kind of what that looks like. And well, here's how you can build into your relationship. And, kind of spiraling down from that, we talk about humility, having that in your relationship. We talk about acceptance, just as God accepts us exactly where we are and how we are, but he loves us too much to leave us where we are. Dads and sons, we got to come to the same conclusion. We're all different. We're all unique. But we accept each other, and then we build with each other, and we build on each other. Forgiveness is another huge one that we do. A lot of times when we see a broken or a perceived, broken or a hiccup in a father-son relationship, it can come back to some sort of forgiveness, or there not being that forgiveness. So we go through that, and everything we talk about, they practice right then and there. So what I feel like is part of the magic, it's not just, there's no teaching going on. It's, hey, here's a topic, here's the Scripture, now you guys try it right now. And so we get to watch. One of the things I love is having a front row seat to watching God move. And so throughout the day, you can tell the guys that showed up and they argued the whole way there. And you can see it as they're walking up to check in. And then you get to watch them throughout the day, just with these seemingly little things that we're having them do and we're having them practice. But it's all things that God has given to us and trying to say, hey, this is what I'm doing to you as your Heavenly Father. Now enact that in your earthly relationships.
Yeah, that's great. So with you having some younger boys, your sons are kindergarten down to a new guy.
Yeah, so 7, 5, and 1.5, almost 1.5.
Okay. So how did some of these conversations, even at that stage, because a lot of what you're talking about, those things are common throughout, father's and son's relationship for a lifetime, right? So how are you implementing some of those things with younger sons?
It's a great question. It looks different with each kid, as it would be for, everyone, right? Because each kid, even though my 3 kids are unique, your kids are even unique from my kids and each other. And so, I say with our oldest, it's, he's our verbal processor. And so for him, it's keeping that open dialogue. It's trying to make sure that he knows he can come and he can talk about anything and everything, even if it's a 5-minute run where you don't even remember what the question was. Because hopefully that'll be something that continues, that becomes a habit, that becomes a pattern. So as he gets into his teenage years and that starts to shut down, there's been a pattern established and a habit established where he's like, oh no, wait, I can still come and I can talk about all this. With the middle one, it's more of, he physically processed. He's much more physical. So it's doing something. It's, maybe it's just coloring, but there's an activity involved where he doesn't necessarily want to just sit and talk. But when you're doing an activity together, that's when he really starts to open up, and just then the stream of consciousness starts to come. And the youngest one right now just wants to be right in the middle of everything and make sure he's not overlooked. So I'm be interested to see what that looks like as he continues to develop and get the rest of his verbal skills and everything. But I'm not sure if I answered your question on that, but I think it's honing in on what makes your kids unique and continuing to foster that.
Yeah, and I'm also hearing not following a script, right? I mean, it's becoming a student of your child.
That's a great way of putting it. Yep.
And learning how they're going to best communicate and really what that child needs to thrive.
And man, it's, I say this, and the other thing I love about what I do is it's a constant reminder to me as a dad. I can't get up there on Saturday and say one thing and then go home and turn the switch off and then come back the next Saturday and even in my own heart have any credibility of what I'm saying. Having said that, I screw up more often than I don't. And I'm fully aware of that. But it's just a reminder of what you just said. Continue to be a student of my kids and what makes them tick. And even as they change and grow, as I mentioned earlier, as dads, as men, and also as dads, we're called to lead our households. And one of the things that we talk about that, when we get a little bit of time with just the dads. And so one of the things I always tell them is trying to become, for myself too, a Deuteronomy 6 dad. Deuteronomy 6 is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. These words I'm commanding you today shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you lie down, and when you rise. And so to me, that's a command as the leader of the household. But then also it tells me how to do it. Not just I need to love the Lord with all my heart. And so I'm making sure my relationship with God is where it needs to be and getting the work it needs. But then teach that to my sons, model that to them.
Yeah.
And then he tells me how to do it. When you sit in your house, when you lie down, when you walk by the way. And so I always like to share that with the dads of, hey, if we know where to look and we are diligent about spending that time with our Heavenly Father, he's telling us how to be dads. And, are there times when I want to come home and just check out? Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Put my feet up and be like, guys, I need y'all to just turn the noise off for a little bit, like go outside and play. And, okay, maybe that happens sometimes. But in my heart, I know that's not what I'm called to do. And so that's what I always try to encourage the dads with is, regardless of where your relationship is with your Heavenly Father or with your kids, you're called to lead and to model and not to check out, even though that's what you want to do sometimes.
Yeah, Michael, that's something you and I have talked about, quite a bit from early college days is that, rejecting passivity. And that's really at the heart of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a natural tendency for men is to naturally, if left on our own, we default into a passive state and to be intentional and push into having a vision for how you want things to be, how you want relationships to be, and intentionally moving them in that direction, which is hard. It's not the default.
Yeah.
Cohlby, I'm curious your thoughts on, and you answered this some, but maybe unpack it a little bit more. If there are different stages of life or maybe different stages of relationship that you've noticed or seen with dads and how dads can specifically relate to sons at different stages. You mentioned that each son needs their own thing, but are there some kind of milestones or benchmarks that are good to watch for or be looking for that dads can engage their sons in?
So, I don't think they're official benchmarks or milestones, but we kind of have some areas that we identify with the dads and with the sons that, hey, these are kind of areas like you're talking about. The first one being kind of that birth to 12 years old. And we reference that as the My Little Buddy phase. And it's because you and your son or sons or kids, whatever it is, are growing closer together. You're in that stage, you're learning about each other, right? And it doesn't matter if it's your firstborn or your second or your last or the only boy in a house full of girls. It doesn't matter where they fall. They're unique, as we said. So you're learning about each other. And that goes up to about 12 years old, kind of those elementary and, maybe to 6th grade, early middle school. And then we go, we draw this line, and then you put, 13. You're like, all right, 13 is kind of that magic. You're a teenager. They start to stink a little bit more. They start to ask you about random body hairs, and you see things really start to change. We were at an event one time, and I was kind of writing this up on the board of just talking about it in more picture form. And so I wrote, 13 on there, kind of had a timeline, and I asked the dads, dads and sons are all sitting there together. And I asked the dad, I said, hey, what happens right here? And I pointed to the 13, and one of the dads in the very back just goes, he gets the devil in him. And it was like, okay, well, I guess we kind of know where that relationship is coming from, what y'all will be working on. But it was hysterical, and everyone started laughing, even the kids started laughing. And I still reference that because it's just, the kids, when they become teenagers, turn into their own animals. And, again, I keep saying this is what I love. And I love everything about what I do, but I love getting to watch that, knowing that it's coming from me. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not there yet, but I need to keep my eye out for whatever it is. So anyways, so then we say, kind of 13 to 18 is those teenage years. And, from 0 to 12, you were growing closer together. 13 to 18 is we see that a deflection happen, just a complete change in your relationship. And it's nothing anybody shoots for. Unfortunately, it's kind of natural because, maybe some dialogue broke down, the lines of communication, maybe, dad is just busier at work. He's 12 to 13 years farther into his career, or maybe he started a new career somewhere in there, different demands on him. The young men are now in junior high and high school, which means they're getting a core group of friends they want to hang out with. They're playing school sports instead of dad being the coach when he was younger. So there's just kind of natural life things that happen that start to drive the dad and son apart a little bit. And so back to the two words I said, that intentional and engaged, we insert those words during that time, and we say, hey guys, this is the time that you both have to be intentional and engaged with each other. Dads, yes, you take the lead as the leader of your household, the leader of your family, but young men, you have a role to play here too. And then we have kind of from 18 on to the rest of their life, which is, how are you going to end? Because we say, all right, guys, at 18, the world says you're an adult. It doesn't matter if you're going to go to college, if you're going to get an apartment, you're going to get a job, you're going to, whatever it is you decide to do at 18, the world says you can do it. So how are you going to exit the nest, if you will? And is it going to be with that big separation, or is it going to be running on parallel tracks because you were intentional and engaged with each other? You kept communication open, and that is what lasts a lifetime. So it's getting them to connect with each other in the moment of wherever they are, but it's so it'll last a lifetime with each other and go well beyond the teenage years and, the rest of their lives. So I would say, again, they're not really benchmarks or official benchmarks, but I think those are kind of the three that we see: birth to 12, 13 to 18, and then 18 and out.
Yeah. I think that's good, especially, as a dad with younger children right now. I mean, it gives you something to kind of be thinking about in terms of how do I want that to look. And those are conversations you and I, Cohlby, have had about trying to think of some creative ways, like how do we, bring our boys into manhood?
Mhm.
What does that look like? How do we do that in a fun way that's not cheesy and corny, but something that they'll look back on and maybe with a little bit of fear and trepidation that it happened at the time.
Yeah.
But it's something that they have a good, good solid memories about as they grow older.
So one of the things that we do, that regardless of the stage, the period of life the young men are in, or the stage of the relationship they're in with their dads, completely separated or running on all cylinders wherever they are. One of the things that we set them up for at every event is what we call the father's blessing. And, if I had to boil down, to one thing that the young men need, regardless of age, regardless of life circumstances, is every young man needs to be blessed by his dad. And this isn't something that we made up, right? This is the picture of Matthew 3. This is Christ's baptism.
Oh, so this isn't like hashtag blessed.
No, this isn't hashtag blessed. That's funny. This is, we just call it the Father's blessing. We weren't sure what else to call it, because that's what was modeled for us in Scripture. And it was, like I said, Matthew 3, Christ's baptism, when God's voice was heard, an audible blessing to his son, saying, this is my son in who I'm well pleased, listen to him. And so what we take from that we believe every young man needs is, it's that sense of identity. You are my son. Two, it's, I love you. I'm proud of you. You have what it takes to be a man. You're pouring those words over your son. You're blessing him. You're affirming him. Not just in the words themselves, but in a public setting to where the other guys around you, everyone else is hearing, oh, wow, this guy really means it. He's letting all of us know who this young man is.
Yeah.
And that's, Tim, as you said, is, we try to bring our young men up into, biblical manhood and, asking all the questions of, well, when does that happen? Well, what does that look like? And, I think that's what they're asking too. When do I become a man? Where is that stage? What does a man look like? What does a man do? What does he not do? And, I think as dads, we kind of struggle with even ourselves. What does that mean? Well, when did I become a man? Was it when I started driving? Was it when I started dating? Was it when I got married? As we answer that question for ourselves, and we try to hopefully our kids don't answer those questions. But we see that a lot with the kids asking, even just internally or by some of their responses, is what is manhood? What does that become?
And that's something Michael and I have talked about since college is, Western society lacks that landmark moment that says, I have now crossed a boundary. I can look back on a time and say, this is when manhood was bestowed on me. So really, as part of the Ironcenturion story, I mean, Michael and Rudy and I started a men's ministry in college. And that was kind of the capstone of that study that we all did together, was like a ceremony where, men were told, like, you're a man now. Like, and that was big. Like, it seemed maybe a little cheesy looking back on it, but like in the moment and even looking back on it, like that's something that I really cherish because there's a time and place that I can look back and say, that's when that happened.
Yeah, that's huge, because you're not walking around still asking yourself that question.
Exactly.
We're sitting here in our mid to late 30s going, am I a man? When did that happen? Or what does that mean?
Right.
We can kind of answer that.
Yeah. So helping create some of that certainty for our sons, I think is crucial.
And
which, by the way, there's a quote that just popped into my head, and it is that a boy becomes a man only in the company of other men and through the calling up of other men. And so I'm paraphrasing that quote. I think it's from John Eldredge in one of his books, talking about raising sons, and that's how a boy becomes a man. It requires the validation and community of men around him. So his father is key in that. The community of men that he looks up to is key in that. And that's part of the required process. And that just stood out to me, kind of based on what you're saying right there. That reminded me of that quote from John Eldredge, which I think is in his book, Fathered by God. I think that's where that comes from.
I also want to be quick to point out too, I think there is a mother's role in that place as well. As I look to what I want my son's path to manhood to look like, I can't picture it without, their mother there to be a part of that growing and discipleship that's happening in her home. So yeah, Michael, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I definitely agree with that. But I also want to provide a little bit of background context too, that we definitely see a shared role of parenting, that just because the bestowing of manhood happens, I think, in the masculine domain, I think that the preparation to get to that point definitely requires two parents that are on board, that are helping propel their son towards biblical masculinity.
Absolutely. And I would even say from that, your young men are going to learn even more by, you dad, how you interact with mom. It's not just, mom teaching them firsthand, but it's watching dad interact with mom. And what does it look like for, a man to respect a woman and, treat her as God's daughter. And those are all things that, our young men need to learn and need to realize that, hey, these are God's daughters. These are not objects for us.
Yeah. Came home from work the other day, and our 4-year-old was standing there in the kitchen watching me greet my wife, and he looks up at us with just a disgusted look on his face, like, do you guys always have to be married?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And you're gonna like it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We typically get that too. They're doing it again. And it's like, it could be a little hug. It could just be a quick kiss, goodbye, hello, whatever it is. Yep.
If you're at that point, because I remember doing that with my parents when I was a kid. And I was like, we were finally across that line in our own house.
There you go. There you go.
How do you know you're getting older?
Yep.
Yeah, Tim, thank you. I didn't in any way want to leave moms out. That I think the main thing was you're mentioning how Western culture largely doesn't include any type of ceremony or point when a boy is recognized by the community as a man. It reminded me of that quote, I think, John Eldredge. But then other cultures have moments where the whole community knows, hey, at this point, this ceremony, this task, this thing is a crossing point into manhood, and we don't have that in our culture. And I think that leaves a hole. It leaves men who are I have called them before overgrown boys. And Gary Thomas in some of his books calls them underdeveloped men, but it leaves people with this hole, this question about their identity and how they're viewed by others. And I think that can be hard. And so one of the things we can look to do is dads can look to try to fill that hole for their son before they launch them into life.
So what do you think are some key elements of that? I mean, because I don't want to just like bunt this ball and say, yeah, dads, you go figure it out. But I mean, what are some of the things that should be a part of a ceremony that bestows manhood?
Ooh, that's a great question. Back to what I said about the blessing, whether that is your capstone or a part of it, or maybe it's something you do on, a routine basis. And it's giving something freely to your son that he doesn't have to earn.
Yeah.
He's not working for this affirmation from his father, for this blessing from his father. And Michael, you brought up John Eldredge, and I think it's The Way of the Wild Heart. He talks about, boyhood is a time where he's asking all these questions. He's asking, do I have what it takes to be a man? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? And, in relation to my dad, like, does he know me? Does he have a special place for me? So I think, special ceremony or keystone moments, whatever it is, but it's answering those questions, even those unasked questions of your young men. Hey, I love you and I'm proud of you no matter what. That's not something you have to earn. That's just something that is mine to give you. Outside of that, Tim, you mentioned earlier having those memorable moments, something that they can look back on and go, yep, that was it right there.
And for that, I think something that's challenging to the child, but I think also something up to the man at that point. um, uh, but something that speaks to what you're talking about earlier of knowing your son, right? So something that is unique and special. So you're probably not going to have a cookie cutter. You have 3 boys. You're probably not going to have a cookie cutter ceremony type of thing that's going to apply to all 3 of them.
Right.
They'll probably have elements, that are carried
and
over,
the heart will probably be the same.
Yeah.
But and that's knowing your kids, and it's something that's detailed for each one. One of the other books that, we can, Michael, you can put these in the notes and whatnot, but, there's, Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert Lewis. And he talks a lot about that, the ceremonies and the pivotal points.
Yep.
John Tyson there's a curriculum called The Primal Path, but he also wrote a book. I think it was just this past year, he wrote the book called The Intentional Father. And I went through it, and it's really good. And it gives ideas for dads, and he actually walks you through step by step. But again, it's hard. He's kind of taking it back. I guess you could either call it old school or you'd call it, what other cultures do. But, by the time you get done with this set path, there is zero doubt in father or son or community's mind that this boy is now a man.
And your son has killed a lion.
And he's, yeah. And if he still has all his fingers, then, he's just a man with incredible skill.
Yeah.
So, but no, there's resources out there. And, I think as dads, I didn't know all this stuff. Like I said, when Knox was born 7 and some change years ago, it was like, oh yeah, you've got a kid now. Like, okay, check that box. Didn't really, know much about it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, wait a minute. I've got to teach him how to be a man. Okay, what does that mean? Am I a man? When did I become? I started asking these questions. It's like, oh, I need to, to teach him about God. Okay, well, do I have all the answers? And I feel like one of the things I've learned, and it goes back to I think whether it's a ceremony or pivotal moment, is our kids are going to learn more from us by watching, not necessarily by just listening.
Yeah.
So you get to this pivotal moment, and I think if we've done this, not necessarily right, but we've walked with God as we're leading our kids, they will have the skills they need of whatever that is.
Yeah, because this moment is kind of dependent on that Deuteronomy 6
right
execution that has been done for 13 to 18 years prior to that point.
Right. Your son turns 18 and you take him to a beach and do a bonfire, and you do out of the blue, he's going to think you're weird.
Yeah.
Like you haven't done anything with me, and now we're doing this giant ceremony. Like, this is weird.
But as if your kid's not going to think you're weird anyway.
Well, that's true. That's true. This may just push him over the edge. But if you have that habit, that lifetime of modeling these things, how you greet your wife, how you talk to her, how do you pray? What does your relationship with God look like?
Yeah.
They're going to learn so much more by watching this. And so as you're building this moment, or maybe it's a series of moments, they're like, okay, I got this. I've seen my dad do this, or this is familiar. I know how to navigate this moment. And I think that's what I try to remind myself is, okay, I can't look forward to a specific moment. I have to be building as we go.
Right.
Cohlby, I think a question that comes to my mind, and probably a lot of people listening right now, is something along the lines of, this is building a really tall order, and I don't know if I measure up. Is this even possible? Like, this just sounds like way more than I maybe knew I was signing up for. How do I do this? Can this even be done? I'm not sure I can do this.
I would say my first answer to that is, without God, no, you probably can't. You're probably not going to measure up. Are you, does that mean you're going to completely ruin your kids? Like, no, I don't think so. But back to, being a Deuteronomy 6, the very first part of that is love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and might. These words I'm commanding you shall be written on your heart. So as dads, regardless of what our relationship with our earthly father looked like. Maybe we didn't have that relationship. Maybe we never received that blessing, those pivotal moments. But I'm 100% convinced that is something that we can still pass on and we can still give, because we all have a heavenly father that's speaking into us, and he's giving us that if we're listening and if we know where to look. So, Michael, to your point, is absolutely a tall order. As men, like you said, we're called to reject passivity. And so, to have that tall order, it's like, you know what, that's a challenge. And that's a challenge for me, when I want to sleep in, when I want to get home and check out, when I want to, and I'm not saying I don't do those things, but that doesn't become a habit. So yeah, it's a tall order. Yeah, it's hard. And you just, you pray prayers you would have never thought before. Sometimes there's no words to your prayers because you're just like, God, I don't even know what to say. I never thought I'd have to open the back door and tell my kids to stop trying to ride the cat. Like, how do I deal with this situation? Like, so you find yourself in these things and you're taking that to God, or you're having conversations with your spouse, but it's a team, and just like you guys have done and like what you guys built, from college on, is you've surrounded yourself with other men, whether they're dads or whether they're just men in your life, godly men, you're surrounding yourself with them and you're getting ideas.
Yeah.
And
I'm not only surrounding myself with them, but I'm surrounding my children with those
absolutely
as well. Like, Michael isn't a dad yet, but he has a presence in my kids' lives, and they know Michael and they love Michael. You get to spend time around
I love them too.
Throw that out there.
Just want to make sure that on the record, just make sure that goes in there. Yep.
Cohlby, you and I have got to spend time with each other's kids, especially doing things like trail life, which we'll do a shout out for here. But I think it's key to have not only those men in your life as a dad, but have those other dads that you trust and are part of your inner circle to be a part of your kids' life, so they can see other men and the way they act and the way they treat their wives.
100%.
I think that's critical.
I heard it said that let's see, and it wasn't like an official quote. I can't remember who said it. I'm going to totally butcher it, but it was, your kids are always asking questions. The big question in that is, who or what are they asking? So, my kids, let's just say that, my kids' hearts are filled with questions, whether they're going to ask me or not. So are they going to go to Google? Are they going to go to their friends at school? Are they going to, fill in the blank? Or, to your point of surrounding your kids with other godly men, are they going to go to them?
So I just got to be a part of something very similar to that, which was really cool. We've had some very close friends here in Texas that ever since Angela and I have been married and at the church that we're at now, have been friends with these people. I mean, they were at the table when we sat down for the young couples class. When I was in basic training, again, very early on in marriage, this little boy sent me a card, and it was the first time he'd ever written his name on a piece of paper, and it got sent to me as part of my letter package for basic training. So it was just something, really neat. Well, this little boy, who was 2 at the time at that story, just turned 13. And my friends were super intentional about making this a big year for him. And they went to that community of men that my buddy has, had around him, and the guys in our small group. And we all got to write him cards of encouragement and, 3 pieces of advice that said, these are things that I wish I would have known or paid attention to when I was 13. But again, it was like, this is a long-standing, like an 11 or 12-year relationship we've had with these friends, that we now get to start having some of these bigger and key moments that we get to be a part of with them. And that's just really neat. So shout out to Keith and Stephanie. You guys are doing great. We're super proud of you guys for taking that time with him to go do those things. And it encourages me as a dad to see my friends doing stuff like that.
So Cohlby, I'm curious about this. What about for the guy listening right now who doesn't have a good model for this because their relationship with their father has been fragmented and fraught, or maybe non-existent, and so they're now trying to figure out how to be a dad without having had a model to look at? Are there some thoughts or some resources that you'd suggest or what advice would you give to somebody who's saying, hey, not only have I never done this before, but I've never seen it done before?
It's a great question. So that's not a first reaction relationship for me. I was fortunate to have it and still have a great relationship with my dad. And I got to see a lot of these things modeled. And, in what I do now, I get to see them modeled 100 different ways on any given Saturday.
Your dad helps out with you guys.
Yeah, which he still comes and volunteers and helps run the day. And so he's still super involved. He's kind of my go-to volunteer whenever we start falling short. I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing this weekend? You want to come out?
But you on occasion have a father and son pair come where it's not actually truly a father and son. Yeah.
So, just real quick, so we had our 200th event this past fall. I think, in December was event 209 or something like that.
That's awesome.
And it's, any given event, we've, never actually taken the survey on this, but it becomes obvious over time kind of who falls where. We see that 50% of the attendees are a biological father-son. 25% are stepdad, stepson. And then the final 25% are uncles, mentors, grandpas, you name it. And we call that the man of significant influence. So it's, for those young men that don't have a father in their lives, there's a father figure somewhere, at least we hope there is. But on the flip side of that, Michael, your question of, the dad that never had that modeled and how do I pass that on? And, I'd say it comes back to a lot of prayer. As Tim said, it's surrounding yourself with other men, maybe men that have done it, men that you can go to and ask questions. A lot of the stuff that we've kind of referenced here this evening, as far as Robert Lewis and my brain's going blank.
John Tyson.
Yeah, John Tyson, and those guys. They write a lot of stuff, and there's tons of curriculum out there, and you don't necessarily need a full blown how to be a better dad in 30 days type thing. It's going to scripture, figuring out what God's relationship as the father, how did he shepherd his people and his kids, and then what did it look like between God and Christ, and kind of taking different elements of that and saying, okay, what is God showing us? What is he teaching us that I can impart to my kids? But back to the very beginning of this, we were talking about, I'd say if that dad, if he did nothing else but be intentional and engaged with his kids, if he did nothing else but those two things, he would know his kids, he would be a student of his kids. And that would be a huge win.
Even by complete worldly standards, those are great things for a dad
Absolutely.
to be doing.
Absolutely.
And you throw in the element of a dad that is, in addition to those things, pursuing Christ. I think that is a terrific model.
Well, and that's your third strand in the cord of three.
Yeah.
The two, that the middle part of that verse is the father-son, earthly relationship. And that's a fantastic father-son relationship. That's what we would all strive for.
Yeah.
That back-to-back picture where you're warning each other about what's going on. You're talking to each other. But then to add in the third element of Christ is when it goes to a whole new level.
Yep.
So yeah, I hope that answers your question of not necessarily a lot of resources, but there's, stuff for that dad.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I think that from the time a baby's born till they turn 18, there are 940 Saturdays, which is not a lot of Saturdays.
No.
You think about all the things a kid needs to learn, and a lot of those things need to be taught by you. And there's a lot of things, a lot of values, a lot of character traits. 940 Saturdays isn't a lot. I heard a piece of advice one time. Somebody was speaking to a group of parents, fathers, and they said, dads, once you have a kid, you should never go to Lowe's alone. And the idea was, not a rule to be followed, right? But just the idea of this habit of take your son along with you through the life that you're leading already, right? So when you go out to mow the grass, take them with you. When you go to Lowe's, take them with you. Have them involved in the stuff that you're already going to do anyway, because those are the things that a man does, because that's what you're doing. And so you can apprentice them into the things that your life is filled with.
Well, and that's a perfect fulfillment of Deuteronomy 6. When you walk by the way. I mean, it's
when you walk by the Lowe's.
When you walk by the Lowe's, but it's how many of us, really go for walks anywhere, right? We drive places now. We go to Lowe's, we go where that is, so that windshield time is our walk by the way. I mean, that's perfect fulfillment of that right there.
I found, especially with my oldest, he and I have had some good conversations just on drives. And something that Angela and I have always tried to do is have intentional one-on-one time with our kids. So we'll have date nights with all of our kids individually. But as my oldest has gotten older, like he'll just have a lot of things he wants to talk about and things that may or may not be interesting to me, but it's just like, you can tell it's on his heart, but the drives just tend to be a great time to, okay, let's shut off the radio so that we can hear each other clearly and just talk about whatever he wants to talk about.
Yep.
And I'll talk to him about things that, because he's also starting to get to the point where he's asking good questions, and it's fun to be able to answer those questions for him in a way that we're having meaningful conversations. And he's, going to be 8 in a week, so it's a fun time in life. And my youngest is 4, my youngest boy is 4, and we're not quite there yet to that level of conversation, but rapidly approaching it. So he's my physical one that wants to.
Yeah, I love you as a kidney punch, as opposed to but what you brought up, and something else that we do at all our events and we really encourage dads with, is asking questions. We believe that questions are the gateway to your kids' hearts.
And you guys even send out like a weekly email with questions. I know I get it, a weekly email or something like that.
So a weekly email and a weekly text message if you sign up, but that stems from what we do at the event, which is just an hour of one-on-one time for the dads and sons to ask questions.
But the email you send out is just hey, here's a question you can ask.
Just to start your week off question kind of thing. But, what you said about whether it's, your kids asking questions or you asking questions, that's just, that's huge. And that requires no resources.
Yeah.
That just requires you to sit in the car with the radio off, or, sit in a room. And we were so during event season, if I'll work pretty much every Saturday. And so if the schedule allows, I'll be off on Monday. That's kind of our weekend is like a Sunday, Monday. And so a lot of times my wife and I will try to, fix coffee. And if the kids are up, get a little kind of like a pre-breakfast, I can fix a bowl of cereal or, whatever it is. And we'll go sit on the porch, and then the kids will kind of come out and they'll want to talk or they'll want to play. And it kind of hit me that, our middle one, Alistair, I hadn't really been asking him a lot of questions. And so, I knew kind of what he liked to do and stuff, but I said, hey, come here a second. And he came over and I was like, what do you love to do right now? Like, what's your favorite thing to do? And he talked about that for a second. And then he got, distracted by the bug that Knox found, or, he went running off, and it was like, okay, cool. That's a little win. He came back, a couple minutes later, and he goes, hey, Daddy, ask me another one of those questions. And I was just kind of like, okay.
Email.
Yeah. It was like, okay, I think I've kind of hit on something. Knox, he talks a mile a minute, but he's never actually told me to ask him a question. It's, the conversation just kind of flows.
Yeah.
And so for Alistair, it was a very specific, hey, Daddy, ask me another one of those questions. Okay, I can do that. Yeah. And it was just, it to me, it reminded me as a dad that I have 3 unique kids, and I need to make sure, the oldest is grabbing for attention. The baby is sucking up a lot of attention. Don't forget about the middle one, and he's still there too, and he has needs. So it was a really cool moment.
I have some fun memories that were just coming to mind as you were talking about doing things and spending time with my dad. And some of the memories that come to mind are memories of big events. In the picture in the office here, I've got a picture on the wall of me and my dad doing some intentional big events together. It's kind of a collage of some photos. And those were big and planned for, but I also have memories of unplanned stuff, like just, working in the yard on a Saturday, for example. And I recall those memories pretty vividly. I can look back on them, and I remember thinking that I was helping because my dad was treating me and calling me a helper. And so I remember helping. But now that I'm an adult and I look back on those scenarios and realize that
I've been around my kids while they're being helpers.
like I was so in the way and I was slowing everything down. But in the moment, I felt an integral part of a team. Like I truly felt that my dad and I were a team doing this project together. I knew he could do it without me. I didn't think I was essential to the process, but I did think I was getting to contribute and help. And I now know, of course, that it probably doubled the time it took to get the project done. But my dad's attitude was always one of me being a participant and a helper in that process. And it is true, as I became older, I did become more and more and more of an actual helper, and we became more of a team on those projects. But for many, many of those years, my dad was graciously bringing me along and creating ways for me to help that weren't just ways to occupy me and, get me to go away, but for us to spend time together. And I still remember those times, and they're very strong, powerful, fond memories. And so I think that's true of, everybody's kids. Those moments are ones they're going to remember with you. And so it may seem innocuous to you, or it may seem inconveniencing. They're making it a whole lot harder for you to get the garage cleaned up. But it's possible, I think, to do it in a way where, like, I still remember cleaning out the garage, and the day we cleaned out the whole garage and built shelves so we could organize it better. I remember that project, and I don't know how helpful I was, but I remember it.
That's the other scary thing is you never know, like, you just roll the dice on what memories are going to stick into adulthood and which ones aren't. And I mean, it goes back to that intentionality piece. Like, this isn't just a one and done type of, you can go to one pure adventure event and call that good.
All right. I'm good. Check. Yeah.
Just make sure all the memories are good ones. That's all.
Yeah. Well, and Michael, to your point, as men, I believe that's how we're wired. From the time we're born to the time we die is, physical activity. That's when like our senses are alive, and that's when those memories stick. I would 100% agree with you. My vivid memories with my dad involved something else. Building a play fort, tearing down a play fort, building a deck, tearing down a fence. Like, there was something physical. And I've got other great memories of, family trips and planned stuff, as you said, but the little things were usually involve something physical or outdoors and nature. And it's just, as guys, that's how we're wired.
Yeah.
So, some great advice that I got from Bo, our founder. He said, find projects you can do at the pace of your kids. And so it was like, when he said that, it made complete sense to me, because it's exactly what you said. I'm like, I can get this done in about an hour, or I can get it done in about 3 weeks if I let them be my helper. But they're always going to remember that. Like, we built a chicken coop in our backyard, and it was a 2-weekend project that just got finished right before Christmas, even though I started it in like September. But, Knox put in probably half of the screws in that thing, and, he loved it, and we've got pictures of it, and he'll remember it. And it's like, okay, I get it. Like, I did a project at the pace that he could do the project.
Yeah. Those are life memories. He'll remember that for forever.
Right.
Yeah. The photo collage that's here on the wall is pretty cool. My dad loved whitewater canoeing and had a hunch that I would too. And so there's a photo of him standing at a river in Tennessee, looking over at the river, the year I was born. And he's holding me on his shoulder the year I'm born. I'm like 6 months old. And then there's a photo of us at the exact same spot, looking at the same river. I'm standing next to him. It's 15 years later. I'm bigger than he is. And we're at the same spot. And in the collage is some other photos of us canoeing this whitewater river together. And so it was kind of this vision.
It would have been better if you were sitting on his shoulder.
I was waiting for that. I'm like, were you back on his shoulder? Because that would
No, because I was way too big. I'm probably 6 or 7 inches taller than he is by that point. But we did the Whitewater River together, and I will always remember it. But I also remember him telling me stories as a kid as what whitewater canoeing was like, and that someday we could go do this river together. And if I hadn't liked whitewater canoeing, we probably would have never done the river, and that photo of me on his shoulder probably would have never amounted to anything. But it did, and I have it now here on my wall. And it was a pretty special memory that he planted the seed for when I was born that allowed us to connect into those devilish 13 plus years, right? Cohlby, is there anything else you think we should talk about and touch on for dads?
Man, we talked about a lot. I feel like I've given out all my nuggets here. I'm happy to do. I just can't think of
Mind you for all the good stuff.
Yeah. Anytime, y'all are gracefully, y'all stretched out these, 5 nuggets into about a 45-minute conversation. So it could have happened a lot faster.
Cohlby, if somebody wanted to know more about Pure Adventure, maybe they're in an area where their church or they can plug in and attend event with their son, where can they learn more about Pure Adventure and your schedule of events?
So you can go to our website, pureadventure.com, and then kind of navigate through there. We've got everything from how to host an event. Typically we'll partner with a church or a school or even a whole community to put events on. We travel, we're 100% mobile. So historically we've gone to about a 7-state area. We're really focusing on North Texas because my wife appreciates it when I'm home Saturday night instead of, Sunday night. But we go anywhere, we partner with anyone. Our seasons kind of work in a spring season and a fall season because in Texas, nobody wants to spend 8 hours outside in the summer months.
Nor the winter months.
When, well, hey, Christmas, we could have had a fantastic event because it was like 85 degrees. Yeah. But whatever. So, our website has our schedule, all the upcoming events. There might be a couple that are like a reserved event, but pretty much all of them are just open to the public, sign up, show up. It's a real easy thing. We've got everything you need. All you got to do is get there and just, come play with us for a day.
Bring your sunglasses and sunscreen.
From time to time, you guys partner with us.
We do. We've done that a couple times. So then the boys get to learn really cool skills as they're connecting with their dads and blow stuff up. So
those are fun times. And then you also have needs for volunteers too. So if you're a younger single guy potentially and looking to maybe help serve in some cool manly ways, you guys are always looking for volunteers. So.
Yep. So it takes, we typically say, it takes about 10 guys to put an event on, and that's, set up, that's running safety. It's, playing with the guests. I mean, the volunteers are really, they're the front line because when they're having fun, the guests are having fun. You're playing with the guests, you're serving them. And we want these dads and sons to see other men serving them. So that's a huge part. It's kind of, we call it our crew, and it's kind of become its own family unit. So you can find out more info about that on our website as well, awesome. How to get involved and all that good stuff.
Fantastic. We'll put a link to it in the show notes below.
Awesome.
All right. Cohlby, thanks for coming and spending some time with us talking about raising sons and having an impact in their life. I appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on. Like Tim said, we partnered. We love what you guys do and the connection. So this was easy. This was fun.
Yeah. Glad to have you, brother.
All right. Thanks, guys.
I'm glad we had Cohlby in for a conversation. That was edifying, I hope, to those who are looking at the process of raising sons.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a lot out of that and really enjoy my time with him as always. So.
Something we should mention, we made a promise on our Thanksgiving Day episode that we were going to print create some stickers and send those to everybody who's helping support the podcast. There's a group of people who are financially helping support the podcast and made a financial donation to Ironcenturion to do that. And so we had these stickers created. And so we're pulling the lists and getting those stickers in the mail to people soon. I think we should say thanks to everybody who
who helped support the podcast and bring more episodes to the airwaves.
Absolutely. You guys are a big part of why we do what we do, and we really appreciate the support from everyone out there listening. And yeah, you guys are great.
And we created a new sticker for this, and I think it turned out pretty cool. But no spoilers. You'll have to wait until it arrives in the mail. But you should know that should be happening soon. So thank you for that. And this is something you can maybe slap on something public-ish so people can ask you about it, and a way to tell others about the podcast.
Absolutely. So the other thing, Michael, I think we need to talk about is what's coming up next on the podcast. Maybe not in the next episode, but just so people can be planning ahead. We're going to be talking about a spiritual formation lecture series that was done by David Coe. And we have some links down in the show notes if you want to listen along to that.
That's right. I'm making progress on that. Are you doing it all again? Because you've heard it before, right?
Yeah, I'm going to do it all again. And we're going to do it together as a staff too. So this will be fun for all of us.
All right. Yeah. So I'm making some progress. I'm just kind of listening along to the series and taking notes about things that stand out to me so we can talk about them. And again, the link is down below. We talked about it also though in episode 10. There's a bit more information about kind of what we were doing. We talked about that in episode 10, but I'm making progress. So I'm looking forward to the conversation with you.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thanks again for joining us on the podcast today, and really excited to have you guys along for this new year and all the things that will be coming up with it. So that's us signing off from the Ironcenturion podcast, a Christ-centered adventure in leadership, manliness, and brotherhood. We'll talk to you again later.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to the Ironcenturion podcast. We're thankful for the support of listeners like you who support this podcast through donations. If you'd like to be a part of our support team, please visit ironcenturion.org/donate. For more information on what it means to be a leader for Christ or how you can get involved, check out ironcenturion.org.